We know that it is a command in the book of Ezekiel. It tells us. Let's go there real quick. Let's go to Ezekiel, chapters 43, verse 10 to 12. By the way, this year we had the amazing honor to teach on the temple location in Jerusalem at a Jerusalem conference. Joe and I, we were able to do it there. I was a little surprised that we were probably the only two who actually took the time to show the archaeological and the stuff. But it was an amazing open door. And people are now the Temple Institute, they did a video on their response to the City of David fiasco, which is great because now they have a response using every single resource that we've used. So it only helped us validate that we are on the same line. So it's not like they did better, we did better. It's just like now we're working together for the same purpose. You follow? All right, so Ezekiel 43, verse 10 and verse 12. Now, when I asked Joe, I remember at a conference, I said, Joe, I really want to learn. It was in Albuquerque, a long time ago. And I asked him, I said, hey, man, I really want to study with you. I mean, we're already studying, but I said, but I want to know that. And he prayed this prayer. And after I'm listening to him going like, oh my gosh, that is so detailed. He goes, yes, that's Ezekiel 43. And it says, Son of man, describe the temple to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the tafnit, the pattern. There's a blueprint that no one can change. And if they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the design of the temple, and its arrangements, and its exits, its entrances, its entire design, and all its ordinances, all its forms, and all its laws. Write it down in their sight, that they may keep its whole design and all its ordinances and perform them. This is the law of the temple. Will you read it with me? This is the law of the temple. It says, the whole area surrounding the mountaintop shall be most holy. Behold, this is the law of the Beit HaMikdash. So this is a mitzvah. This is a commandment that the Adonai wants us to study. Then how come we never focused on it? Would I submit to you that the temple study is probably the most neglected area of study in our walk. But yet, Paul's letters, if you read all of Ephesians, Corinthians, you read all Colossians, you read all those letters of Paul, he is using always tabernacle and temple language to teach the Gentiles who are turning over to the gospel how to walk orderly with function and purpose. Because ultimately, the plan of God is to dwell among us. That's what he desires. Now, think about that for 1 second. How is it that the Creator wants to dwell with us? Have you ever thought about that? I do. I mean, how the Creator of heaven and earth, he actually wants to dwell among us. So in order for us to be the serving vessels of his presence, we have to do our part to learn temple protocol to prepare ourselves to host our King. That's what the temple is all about. So the function of the temple, what happened here? There we go. It didn't do it the way I wanted to. There we go. The function of the temple. I just want to play with my new little gadget here. All right. The function of the temple in relation to Adam and humanity. Isn't that cool? Are you impressed? The function of the temple in relation to the nation of Israel in its legal structure. We never think about the temple as a legal structure. The temple was the bank. The temple was, by the way, I just did a witcast with Josh Tolley. He's a very well-known radio personality. He's a believer in Yeshua. And he's a follower in the Torah. And he talks about business from a perspective of Torah. What's interesting is that the moment he said something, I thought, well, the temple was a center of business. It was a bank. I want to talk about entrepreneurs. I mean, you need to have barley, you need to have wheat, you need to have oil, you need to have cattle, you need to have this. So you got to offer jobs to people to make the function of the throne of God, be the center of the life. But we never think about the legality of the Beit HaMikdash, or the temple. So we only look at it as, well, Jesus came, he died and resurrected, so we don't need that anymore. And that's a big mistake. And the function of the temple in relation to Adam and humanity. Why is it that Paul says to Corinthians, hey, we are the temple of God? But if you look at Corinthians chapters 1, verse 1, And to verse 3, he's not talking to the individual. He's talking to the collective body of believers in Corinth. So as a body, we are all a temple of God. Okay? So is it sound logical to say we are the temple of God and then eat unclean foods? Because you can never put any unclean food on the altar. So you see, if we understand the temple function, then when we say, I am the temple, then I should never see you eating any shrimp. Or any pork. Because then you're showing me that you're defiling the temple. And then becomes a stumbling block. You see, so you know them by their fruit and by their lifestyle. Now, if you're not there, eating clean completely yet, because you're not completely convinced, I'm not going to fight with you about food. I'm only going to show you, if you're going to call yourself the temple of God as a body, then we have to walk and behave and you know, in the example of, what purity laws are. How many of you have studied purity laws in the temple? What is holy and what is profane? How come all the hands are not up? I mean, we need to know this. Holy and profane, clean and unclean. That's what Ezekiel chapter 44, verse 23 says. That the priest shall teach you to separate clean and unclean, holy and profane. That is our duty. Right? So maybe you don't study it. You don't have the time. Well, that's what we study. So we can share it with you. It's okay. I just want to make you feel bad once in a while. So what is the main focus? Let's read this with me because this is the focus of the whole teaching. The ultimate goal of creation is for humanity to dwell with God. Now think about that for 1 second. Can the Lord dwell in the state of humanity today? But you notice that after the millennial reign, you don't hear about a temple. After the reigning of Messiah, you don't hear about a temple. Why? Because the earth will be restored to its original state. The earth, Genesis chapters 1 and 2, is a temple text. Do you know that? We were designed by the Creator to rule and reign. Genesis 1:26. We are to rule and reign with Him. We're to rule with Him. To reign on His creation. We are the image. We are the representation of His character, His integrity, His honor. How do you learn how to approach Him? How do you learn how to bring what pleases Him? How do you bring the whole Bible in Genesis? He told Abel what to bring. He told Cain what to bring. One brought whatever he wanted to, and the other one what the Lord desired. And one died, and the other one didn't. One was pleased by the Lord, and the other one was not pleased. You see, so there's always a protocol. Listen, there's no secrets in the Bible. Did you know that the Torah is the only document of the ancient Near East in which the clarity of the expectations of its God. Every other religion, they did not know what pleased their God. So they believed the gods were, capricious. They just wanted, they will kill you at any moment. No, the Torah, no. The Torah specifies exactly what He requires of you. You want to find favor in my eyes? You committed this transgression? Not a problem. You repent and you bring this offering. Make sure that offering is correct. And then it'll be cool. We can be restored. Okay? So the ultimate goal is all about God dwelling with us. Now, there is a good reason for this, though. Why has it been so difficult for us to understand the temple concept, such as the offerings, Korban? In the system of religion or Christianity, and by the way, when I say Christianity, I mean the system. When I say Judaism, I mean the religions. I'm not talking about the people. Is that good? Korban. In the Christian mindset, the word Korban means blood, sacrifice, death. In the Hebrew mindset of Korban is, coming near, blood manipulation, life. It's the opposite. It's complete opposite. It was God's way of saying, you are outside of my sacred space. You cannot enter past that threshold. But I'm still going to interact with you. And I set my priests as the vessels to still allow you access to me. But there has to be a protocol how you approach me. I still want to hang out with you. I still want to talk to you. Come to my feast. Come to my Sabbath. Come to this. But if you do it my way, okay? So, when we think Korban, we think come near, life, reconciliation, restoration. The feast, modim, okay? Moedim, I'm sorry. The feast. and the status of purity, impurity, and holiness. These things are so far away from our scope in the systems of religion. By the way, we can literally spend hours only on the korbanot, on the sacrifices, the offerings. And the feast too. But you know what we do when we go to congregations every Shabbat? We talk about why we need to keep the Sabbath. Hello. It's not that difficult. It's on the seventh day. Sundown to sundown. Study. Praise the Lord. Next, they got to learn something else. You know, people are still stuck in the name, Sabbath. The name, Sabbath. Those are important. But there's also the sacrifices, the laws of holiness, and there's history and all this stuff that we also can complement with our study. Okay? So, why is it difficult? There's a reason for this. Before the temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE, a remarkable event occurred. Besides the destruction of the temple, also the moment in which Yeshua died, the Gospels inform us that the veil was torn in two. Now, you may ask, which veil was it? There were 4 veils in the temple building in the first century. And that's another teaching altogether, okay? We can talk about that later. It says, the veil torn in two, giving itself to the interpretation that there is already access to the throne, that there is no need for a temple, and the end of any sacrificial system, and the beginning of a season called grace. That's what the system of religion says. Where the Torah is exposed to as a B plan. It did not work to bring the lost men back to the Father. That's what the way we were taught. Well, you know, the gospel is God's way. So now the Torah is, we don't need that. The temple, that doesn't work. It's the opposite. Because if that's the case, then why would the Lord bring the temple back in the millennial reign? Now, did you know that in the ancient world, when kings were enthroned, they built temples? Let me repeat that again. In the ancient world, when kings were enthroned, they built temples to their gods. Because the kings in the ancient world were the representation of that God on the earth. They were the image of that God. Thus, they want everyone to know who put them in power. That gives you a really good insight as to the attitude of King Saul, who never cared about a tabernacle or a temple, never obeyed, versus David, that the first thing he wanted to do was build a temple for the Lord. That's not very, by the way, unique in the ancient world. Every king will build temples. The pharaohs did it. Every new pharaoh built temples to their gods that they followed. Okay, there's nothing bad with that in the sense of being kings. So if Yeshua is going to be declared the king on the earth, literally when he returns, so the temple will be restored because that's the throne of God on the earth. Ezekiel chapters 44 talks about that. Okay? All right, so why has it been difficult for us to understand temple concepts, such as, again, the same thing? Because of the death and resurrection of Yeshua and the destruction of the temple. Those 2 points right here is the dividing line between what we're trying to do, returning and eliminating that line of separation. You know, that separating is keeping us from moving forward and understanding a greater purpose for us in the Torah. Listen, 90% of your issues in your congregations deals in one way or another with temple principles. Once you understand it, by the way, 71 commandments of the 613 commandments, right? According to their calculation of the people who counted them. 271 deals with temple. Over a third of the commandments in the Torah. And that's the area least studied. You think that's a problem? It's like saying, well, we live in America, we're free. But yet, we don't even know the laws of America. I mean, ask the young kids about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. They have no idea. But we're free. That's why they want socialism now. They don't value their freedom. You see? That's why Israel is told, don't forget that you were strangers in Egypt. Value your freedom. And value the Bill of Rights. Value the Torah. Value the commandments. That's what gives you the certification of freedom. Okay? So these things are what separates us. Because the temple is the place of God's throne. Jeremiah chapter 17:12. I'm going to go really quickly through a lot of these. And if I don't read them all, you got them in your workbook, okay? Jeremiah 17:12 says, O Adonai, your temple is a glorious throne that has stood on a mountain from the beginning. That means that creation, Genesis, is a cosmic mountain. You're going to hear that from us. Cosmic mountain. That means that Jerusalem is the original place of creation. Okay, next. Because the temple is a place of God's throne. Ezekiel chapters 43, 5-7 says, and the Spirit lifted me up and brought me into the inner court. And the glory of the Lord filled the temple. Now, wait a minute. I got to use my little gadget here. Read it with me. The glory of the, come on, read it with me. The glory of the field. You know why I want you to read that? Because there are people going around saying that that temple that's going to be built is an abomination to God. Seriously. So I got a question for you. How can an abomination to God, according to them, can withstand the glory of God? The glory of God is going to be there. So clearly it's sanctioned by Him. If we just read the Bible, but we don't understand purity laws, we don't know Kedusha, we don't know the levels of holiness. So when we read these verses, we don't even get an idea that we are contradicting ourselves by our former theologies. Okay? And it says, while the men were standing beside me, I heard someone speaking to me from inside the temple. And he said to me, Son of man, this is the place of my... Now, let me ask you a question. How do you feel knowing that the Father provided the means for you to come here to Florida in a beautiful day to study about His throne? What have you done to find this kind of favor? That the Father at one point or another raised up this desire to know more about His throne. All the new people that are here. I mean, you probably could care less about the temple 5 years ago. And now you come all the way to Florida to hear some guy you never heard before. And it's because the Lord is trying to meet with you. Because we call ourselves the house of Israel, right? He wants us to be ashamed of our abominations. He does. What did the house of Israel do? They changed the feast from the 7th to the 8th. They changed the priesthood from the Levitical to anybody to become priest until Dan and Bethel. They changed the location of the temple from Jerusalem to Bethel until Dan. Does that sound familiar? Are we doing the same things? This is the only way we will be able to learn His ways. By the way, if we don't, I submit to you that we will be judged accordingly. Because the Father has called us from darkness to be the light unto the nations, to bear His image, to reveal to the nations that His house still He wants to dwell with us. It's up to us to learn His ways. And it's more than just a Hebrew word. Hebrew is all good and dandy, but if we do not understand His requirements, then even all the history, even all the rabbinical stuff, even in Judaism, you know, how they study the temple? Well, they do the Siddur. In the Siddur, the whole prayers deal with temple service, avodah. You know, that's how they keep remembering themselves of that. But we want to go study a little bit more. And it says, this is the place of my throne and the place of the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of the children of Israel forever. And the house of Israel shall no more defile my holy name, neither they nor their kings. By their harlotry and by their carcasses, their kings in their high places. 2 Chronicles. When Solomon had finished the temple of the Lord and the royal place, and had succeeded in carrying out all that he had in mind to do in the temple of the Lord and in his own place, the Lord appeared to him at night and said, I have heard your prayers and have chosen this place for myself as a temple for sacrifices. So who chose the place? So why do we challenge His authority by disregarding what He chose? What we've learned so far is His throne. See, is His throne where He places His feet. The glory dwells in it, and then He wants to dwell with us there. Gracias, Nelly. He wants to dwell with us there. So why do we disregard what He calls holy? Now think about this. He calls it holy, and now we question that. What God calls holy, you can't question. It is His kingdom. We are His servants. Servants don't tell the master what to do. Okay? 2 Chronicles, chapter 7, verse 14, 16. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I forgive their sins and will heal their land. Now my eyes will be open and my ears attentive to the prayers offered in this place. Makom. Hamakom, the place, is an idiom for the temple. This place. That's why people go to the Kotel. They go to the Western Wall. They pray. Now because the Western Wall that's an extension. That's a retaining wall from the time of Herod. But that's the closest to where the presence of God was on the temple. So that the place, Jerusalem, is holy city. It's defiled now by the nations there, but it still bears the name of God. So you go there and you say, Lord, I put my petitions before you. He said he will listen to it. Whether there's a temple or not there. Because his name dwells, that's the throne. It will be restored. I have chosen and consecrated this temple so that my name may be there forever. This is a very important verse. It says, I have chosen. Who chose? I have chosen and consecrated. Those are very big words. Consecration, very big. What happens when a husband and a wife, if you are consecrated towards one another and one of them cheats on you? Chaos. The house has to be divided. Everything, that's what happened with Israel. Idolatry, the house was divided, the temple destroyed, go on to the nations. Exile. What happened in the garden? Adam was supposed to keep the holiness, avodah. He was to keep it and work it. The same two words, avodah, what the service of the temple was in by the priests, avodah. And they didn't do their job. The house was divided, and then chaos came into their family, and they were outside the holy space of God, the consecrated place of the garden. Okay? All right, so as we continue to see this, he also says, my eyes and my heart. Now, wow, check this out. You know, I've read these things before, and sometimes you miss verses because you go over so fast. I have chosen and consecrated this place, this temple, so that my name may be there forever. My eyes and my will always be there. So, hey, the temple is on a different location now. Hey, the priesthood is a different priesthood now. Hey, the sacrifice is done away with. Hey, Jerusalem is now your holy city. Whoa, you're doing a lot of damage because God said has chosen, consecrated, put his name, and he will dwell there. Are we sure we want to fight that battle? Let me move on. You already have those in your workbook, so. The architecture and representation of the cosmic mountain that announces the sovereignty and the presence of the king. The cosmic mountain motif, you find that. This is important. Israel is delivered out of oppression from Egypt. And where did God take them? To a mountain. Okay? We know Jerusalem is a mountain. Shiloh is a mountain. You know, Shechem is a mountain. You know, we know there are mountains there. So it's called high places. You know, the Bible talks about the Levites. One of the Psalms says, as I look to the mountains, from where does your help come from? Your help comes from the Lord who created the heavens and the earth, right? And we always question it. We learned that verse when we were in the church system, and we think it's just a poem. A Levite woke up in the morning and looked at the mountains of Jerusalem and says, oh, wow. As I look to the hills, from where No. He's making a contrast from the way the Israelites were worshiping and the Canaanites, putting high places and images on high mountains. And now the Levites trying to make a contrast. He's telling them, as I look to the hills, he's saying, from where does your help come from? From the gods of Asherah? Astartes and Baal? Or does it come from the Lord, the creator of heaven and earth? It's a battle for honor. The Levi is trying to let you know, listen, he is the creator. The God of this temple, he is the one who has dominion over heaven and earth. It's not the one in the mountains. So the one worship in the mountains, the cosmic mountain is important. It's a very important principle. You're going to see that everywhere in Scripture. You're going to see it everywhere. You know, Jerusalem is a mountain. You know, creation, we believe that it was actually on the mountain, the same Jerusalem. You see that all the time, from mountain to mountain, from mountain to mountain. Why does he do that? Because in the ancient world, that was represented primordial hill. The place that first emerged from the waters that covered the earth during the creative process. In Egypt, for example, it was considered that all the temples represented the primordial mountain. Every pyramid and the temples represented a mountain. Egypt is a little flat, you know. Mesopotamia too. In Mesopotamia, it looked like a ziggurat. It's like a stepstone, pyramid. That's what the holy spaces were. Now, why is this so important to understand? Because when Noah means rest was an idiom for rule and kingship. When he rested on Mount Ararat, he landed on the mountain, right? Noah on the big old boat, they rest on the mountain. And then what does he do? He dedicates an altar to the Lord, restoring the authority of the Lord over the earth. Because altars represent authority and ownership. That's why Elijah, he built an altar for the Lord. And then the prophets of Baal, they build their altar. And then he says, okay, let's see who shows up. Come on. Whoever shows up owns this whole earth. And that's why when the prophets of Baal, they saw the fire come from heaven, all of Israel says, Adonai hu Elohim. All of them, they said, and Elijah prayed, Lord, let it be this day that they may know that you are God and there's no other. The whole idea is to establish the sovereignty of the Creator. So therefore, the cosmic mountain is important because you see all this over. The whole Mount Carmel is on a mount. Battle for authority and honor. You're going to see this motifs going through the whole Bible. It's very, very important. It's part of the essence of why we study the temple. Why the temple has to be on a mountain top. Ancient threshing floors. Okay, the city of David has never been a mountain. Anybody who does honest research on topography knows that. Only people are in the Hebrew roots who are looking to create and reinvent the wheel. Really? We just came in yesterday. We came in yesterday. And the Bible says, do this so you'll be ashamed of your abominations. What are we doing? Exactly the same thing Israel did. But hey, I can't say anything like that on Facebook. People get all mad at me if I make a comment. The area that we least study, the area that we really don't know much about, when we make a comment about the temple, but because it goes against your theology, now people get offended. Instead of saying, wow, I never heard that before. How can I find it? Let me verify. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. When you take that attitude, when we decide to become like that, that's when we start growing. Listen, Messiah is not for compromise. For me, that's hello. But everything else, I'm willing to learn. If I'm wrong, I change it. It's not a problem. Hey, Greg, how many things have you learned since you started coming 4 years ago? Whole bunch of stuff, right? And he studies. And he keeps coming every year, and we keep learning together. All right? Okay, so the temple is associated with the waters of life that flow from the spring into the building itself. Now, interesting, chaos, chaotic waters, chaos and order and chaos. That's very important because the temple is all about order. And then you have chaotic waters. You see the same motif all through the Bible too. Same symbolisms all the time. You see the Red Sea, chaotic waters. Then water and land becomes dry. The land became dry by strong wind. In creation, you have chaos to order, and then the Lord divides the water from the land, and there's the Spirit of God in the waters of the sea. You know what that means, according to ancient Near Eastern perspective? That the God of Israel is the one who controls life and death and controls chaos. That's why in the tabernacle you have the laver. The laver in the tabernacle is to show you that, by the way, the measurement was 40 seah. That's a liquid measurement, right? So, but why 40? Because 40 was connected with the god Ea or Enki of Mesopotamia and some of the ancient gods of chaos and the underworld and death. So the Lord is saying, no, in my temple it's about life. I'm the one who controls the waters. I'm the one who controls the chaos. I'm the one who gives order to all creation from my mountain. This is not in your book, by the way. Okay? And I'm the one, okay, who has dominion over life and death. Yes? That's why Yeshua walked on water, by the way. Yeshua, what does he need to walk on water for? I mean, would that eliminate him as the Messiah if he didn't walk on water? No, but why did he? See, you're focusing only on the miracle. You don't know what the miracle means. And then Peter looks at him, and he's walking on water. Peter takes his eyes from him, goes in the water, he cries out, and the Lord extends his arm. His arm. Have you studied what the powerful arm of the Lord meant in the ancient Near East? Salvation, kingship, ruleship, authority, and ownership. That's all about, it's all about resurrection. The whole thing about Yeshua walking on the water. How the Lord is going to give life from the dead, all those who believe in Him through His right arm. That's the gospel, right in the whole thing. But that you get that by understanding creation and the role of water, chaos, and the temple. Okay, you see how it reflects. Now, how many of you wonder how come we need a laver in the temple? You know, the whole huge laver for the wash and the feet and the hands. Well, you could do that in the corner. Why do you need to have it? Because it has a greater meaning. Yes, laws of purity, but a greater meaning of dominion and power and ownership of the earth over chaos. That's why you do a mikvah, baptism. Comes from chaos, disorder, to ownership by God and order. New beginnings, new creation. Come on, just say amen or something. Amen. All right. It says, the springs that existed in the temples were associated with the primordial waters of creation. Nun in Egypt, Apsu in Mesopotamia, and Tehom in Israel. Okay? So it's all about dominion over the heavens, the earth, and the underworld. And they believe that. Now, we know when you read the Psalms, you see this. And the temple is what's giving you that's why there's water flowing from underneath the temple. To show you that it is the God of Israel who brings forth living waters. He is the one who gives life. That's why Yeshua is the well of living waters. All this is connected. When Yeshua says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, He is using temple principles, ancient Near East, righteousness and justice. All right, the temple is about life. The temple is founded and remains in contact with the waters of creation. These waters carry the dual symbolism of the chaotic waters that were organized during the creation and of the saving nature of the waters of life. Is it making sense? 2 Samuel, chapters 24, verse 20 to 21. I was going to ask something else about the waters, but... Oh, in the Tractate Midot. By the way, write this down. You need to read this. Midot. Tractate Midot of the Mishnah. Midot. M-I-D-D-O-T. Midot. Please read that. The next one is Tamid. T-A-M-I-D. And the next one is Yoma. Y-O-M-A. Now, there's a lot more that you can read. But if you start on those three, it's going to give you a really interesting perspective of temple function and really valuable information about things that you read in the Gospels and in the first century. Yoma deals with Yom Kippur. So you need to read Yoma if you want to talk about the book of Hebrews. So if you ask me a question, you want to argue, not you in the sense of overall. If people want to argue about the book of Hebrews, I always ask them, have you read the context of Yoma? Have you ever considered the book of Hebrews in the context of the Day of Atonement? For the new brothers and sisters that are here, how many of you never considered studying the book of Hebrews in the context of the Day of Atonement? Right? How about if I submit to you that Ryan and I, especially Ryan, in his master's degree, he found this thing that blew me away. Okay? He says, hey, Rico, do you know the word remission of sin in Hebrews chapters 9, 22? The word sins does not appear in the Greek, but the word there for remission means aphesis in Greek. When you trace it to the Septuagint into the Hebrew, is Yovel. Jubilee. Now, think about this. Have you ever considered the book of Hebrews in the context of the Day of Atonement in the year of Jubilee? Now, you have to study the laws of Jubilee. For you to understand the laws of Jubilee, you have to study the temple, because that's the only way you can declare the Jubilee from. And you can't do it if you don't know the feast. So you have to start Passover. Right? And then you have to learn about the new moons. Then you have to learn about the sacrifices. So you cannot keep all these things if you don't start from the beginning, and it deals with the temple. You see what I mean? Okay. Now here David is buying the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. Now Dina has got, I think in her book, chapters 5. Chapters 5 of your book. She's doing amazing work on temple stuff, connecting with ancient Near East. Please get a copy of that. I think it will help you a lot. She's doing a new book now on Noah. The other night around midnight, I found something in the book of Genesis in regards to to rest. And I sent it to her. I was all excited. I found something she don't know. Yes, and I sent it to her. She answered back, yeah, it's in my book. And I go, Threshing floors are important. You understand what threshing floors meant and were in the ancient world, and then you know that the only location that a temple will be with a former threshing floor. Top of mountains. Anyway, that's the place. If you follow the verses where the deity always revealed themselves at a threshing floor, then you can follow the history and you know where the location of the temple will be if you follow these things. How many of you never considered threshing floors as holy spaces, sacred spaces? You see? So once you understand what it meant and why, the Lord appeared, his messenger, Malach Elohim, the messenger of the covenant, always revealing himself in certain places on a threshing floor. Gideon, right? Gideon. When he had the sign, he went to a threshing floor. He put the sign. There's always something happening on the threshing floor. It's all connected. All right? Let's move on. So we have the evidence that David bought a piece of land. That's what 2 Samuel was about. He bought a piece of land. Now, it's interesting that today, the two most sought after pieces of land in Israel deal with exactly the places where the Bible gives us a deed of it. So let me go back real quick. In 2 Samuel, we have that David bought a place for 50 shekels of silver and then 600 shekels of gold. Okay? First Chronicles and then 2 Samuel talks about that. Now, David bought a piece of land. We see that. Jacob bought a piece of land, Shechem. And Abraham bought a piece of land from the Hittite. Right? Hebron. Yes? What are the most contested pieces of land today in Israel? The trouble spots. Exactly those three places. Now, the Torah contains the legal deeds and the purchase of that. I know exactly how many acres Abraham purchased from the Hittite. 133 acres. Well, Rico, how do you know? That's a teaching in itself. I think Terry Neely can teach you that one. She heard it so many times that she goes, no more about Abraham, Rico. If you go back to the ancient world, then you know their loss, and then you know the price of the acre back then, and then you have 400 shekels of whatever amount it was, and then you divide that into, 3, that was the price per shekel, 3 shekels per acre, 133 acres. And so we have now the purchase of those places. Okay? That's not part of the teaching, but that's okay. So then we have David bought from Aran of the Jebusite, 2 Samuel. Okay? This is a very important map right here because it shows the top of the mountain. And by the way, the temple is not located in the highest point on the Temple Mount, by the way. The Antonia is higher than where the temple is. But what people don't realize that right over here, it's called the Bethesda Valley. Right in there, Bethesda Valley, that divides the Temple Mount from the Antonia. During the time of Herod, then it was all made into one platform. I'm going to talk about that in my basic introduction to geography. That's going to be sometime this weekend, okay? So we're not going to really focus a lot on this. But this is the original city of David that you see here. Now, real quickly, this, in the time of the kings, in the time of David, it was called Zion. Yes. During the time of David, it was called Zion. Why? Because there was nothing to the north, there was nothing to the left, to the west of it. The city walls, so that's only Zion. Okay, but when the temple was built on top, here on the mountaintop, and the walls came around it, everything within the city walls becomes Zion. The people, the city, the temple. And then when Herod expanded on the city walls, and he started building to the west and the north, anything within the city walls becomes Zion. The temple, the people, the city. You follow? So when somebody tells me, but the Bible says the city of David is Zion. Yeah. But during the time of Solomon, the Temple Mount was always known as Zion. During the time of Herod, the whole city was called Zion, and the people and the temple. Okay? Does that make sense? Yes? Are you learning something new already? Oh, yes. Only 3 of you. Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. I'm so excited. The Jebusite, the city of David, and the Temple Mount, they're all the same. About the same location. Okay? Geography and topography is utmost important. The topography of today is not original. Because Jerusalem was conquered over 44 times. So therefore you have communities. That's why you have tells, the mounts, There's cities built on cities. The same thing happens with Jerusalem. You must consider the topographical maps. Topographical maps really help you because it's still there. You still see the elevations and things like that. So you go to Jerusalem today, the modern day Dung Gate is actually new. The ancient Dung Gate is all the way south by Shiloah. How many of you have been to Israel here? Raise your hand. Let me ask another question. How many of you have never been to Israel? Raise your hand. All right, November 10th. November 10th to the 24th, I have a tour. Seriously, come with us. How many of you here have been on my tour? Raise your hand. Look around. You can ask them about how it was. All right? Please come with us. I think you'll enjoy yourself. We'll host you. The king is waiting for you. Is it working? Is it working? Topography is very important, okay? So, again, in the ancient world, this is something not in the topic here, but I want to share it with you. Kings, they built temples, palaces, and gardens. Kings built temples, palaces, and gardens. Something that we need to understand. You see the temple here? I learned this from Ryan, by the way. Well, I want you to notice something. When I learn something from somebody else, I say it. Okay? Ryan started studying with me like 7 years ago, like Walter and some of the other ones here, Gabriel and Jose, Pinato and his wife, Elena. You know, and it's nice to have when students become teachers. It's really awesome. Ryan taught me this because I really was not focusing on it. So he taught me this. He goes, the expression sit at my right hand, that's because the temple, the palace of Solomon was to the right. If you're looking east to the Mount of Olives here, this is south, and that's west. Man, I love this little gadget. That looks so cool. You know, so here you have on the north, on the temple, to the right of it. If you're looking east, then that'll be the right hand of the temple. That's where the king's palace was. Sit at my right hand is an expression of kingship. Okay? Yes? All right, so at the same token, we know now, according to 1 Kings, tells us that all this area, the Kidron Valley, right over here, was gardens. The gardens of the king. Let me show you. Right in here. You see the gardens of the king right there? 1 Kings talks about this. Okay, so in the ancient world, the kings built temples, palaces, and gardens. Every king did. The Egyptians, Mesopotamians, the Assyrians, the Hittites, all those guys did. Are you noticing something? That I'm not just focusing on temple only. I'm connecting the ancient history. You know why? Because the temple was built during the time frame. So to understand the need for why we study the temple, so far we're connecting it with primordial mountains, cosmic mountains, sacred spaces, the throne of God, the glory of the Lord. We are his representation, right? So therefore, I'm trying to let you know that the king establishes his throne, he establishes his prince, and then he has a garden. Why a garden? Because the king is supposed to be Adam on the earth. The representation of this God that no one can see is the king. Have you ever wondered why you're not supposed to have any images? You are commanded not to have any images in Israel. Why is that? Because God wants you to be his image. That's how you were created. You were created in the image of God, in his likeness. Now, think about this. I want you to make note of this. This is important. I'm going to go slow. Okay? In the ancient Near East, the gods, this is what everyone believed. The gods created humanity for the sole purpose of slavery. Workforce. That's what they created them for. Now, with that being said, let's go to Genesis 1:26. Now, think about this. Let's say that the Torah is written, the testimony of a people coming to the knowledge of their God, to get to know him in a deeper dimension, right? Now, the Bible is written, and an Egyptian opens the Bible. Okay? They can read it. Okay? So now they open the Bible, immediately he'll be like, really? Only one God created the heavens and the earth? It's not the thousands of Egypt? It's not the thousands of Egypt? It's only one, Elohim? And they name them too. It's not Marduk, it's not Ea, it's not Api, it's not Osiris, it's not this, it's not that. It's only one. And then he keeps reading and says, oh, wait a minute. The Spirit of the Lord hovered over the waters of the earth? Well, I don't understand. It has power over Osiris? And Api of the Nile River? And then it says, and he separated the heavens and the earth. And the Ruach Elohim hovered over the waters of the earth. Whoa, wait a minute. That means that the God of Israel has control over the underworld and death? Isn't that Nubis? And then it starts giving you function. Well, wait a minute. The God of Israel is giving function to his creation? That means that we're not slaves? Because then in 126 says, and the Lord said, let us make man in our image according to our likeness. Let them have dominion. Everybody focuses on let us. That's the whole argument in Christianity. Let us. That's not the point. The point was that God of Israel is creating humanity to be his representation on the earth. Talk about an upgrade. Right? From like slavery, like everybody's treating their people. The kings were the gods. Everybody's just trash. Right? And then the God of Israel says to you, no. I created you for you to have purpose in life. You are not a slave. You are now my daughter and you are my son. You represent me. You represent my integrity, my honor, my character, my everything. All you need to do is follow the instructions. You follow the instructions, then people will ask you, why are you so blessed? Because my God is good. He is so good. His land is awesome. His temple is magnificent. And all that's to become a testimony. And there's something that I found that I showed Dina that she already knows everything. When it says that he put him in the garden. The word there, put, in this particular translation, is related to the Hebrew word Noach, right? Which means rest. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how we can prove that God created us to be his miniature temple on the earth. To show that we are ruling with him. Because the word Noach means rest. And the word rest was an idiom for kingship, for ruleship, for ownership, for dominion. Now think about this, my sister. The Lord created you for a purpose. Is that your life will become a representation of all who he is. So the way you live your life, the way you eat, the way you treat your neighbor, the way you speak to people, the way you study the Bible, the way you raise your children, when they ask you, they go, well, who do you serve? Because what you do is different than anybody else's. I serve Adonai, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The great and awesome God, supreme God, who bestows beneficial kindness and creates everything. He brings a redeemer for the children's children for his namesake with love. Oh, King, helper, and shield. That's our duty. That's why we study the temple. So he teaches us how you want to talk to him. How do you present yourself before a king? No, I demand and I declare right now in the name of Jesus. Really? That's how we pray. No, the temple teaches you protocol, order, and respect and reverence. When you speak to my king, you do it in a manner befitting a king. You see, you don't come to him demanding anything. You present yourself in a manner, and I learned this in yeshiva when I went to Jerusalem in 2004. I had the privilege to go to Eish HaTorah for like 4 or 5 weeks, right? I was there studying. I learned a lot of stuff that I really implemented in my life. I remember when they were doing the shaharit, they go 3 steps back and forward. I'm going, what in the world is that about? I mean, I was always criticizing everything Jewish back then too. You know, I went to my terrorist stage. You know, we all go through that. And instead of me debating and instead of me like questioning in a bad way, I asked the rabbi, why do you do that? And he goes, oh, that's because we are removing, symbolically, we are removing ourselves from this world and presenting ourselves before the king. That resonated with me, man. I'm a believer in Yeshua. He has given me access to the Heavenly Father. And the way I pray is, hey, I'm here. You got to do because I said so. Instead of saying, Baruch atah Adonai, Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak. Blessed are you, O Lord, King of the universe. What kind of response would it be if I say, hey, I need this. Will you get it right now? I need it. Do it. Or if I come to say, hey, will you do me a favor? Will you please be so kind to help me with this? Just the way we present ourselves to him. Oh, man, think about how David found the favor of the Lord because his psalms just melted the heart of God. And then everything David wanted, he was willing to do. Just because the way he approached him. We have taken worship and singing in a completely different dimension. You know, worship. Do a little slow song for a half hour until the first person cries. Then the Spirit of God showed up. It's true. If no one starts crying at one of those worship services, then it's not a legit worship service. I've been in that. It's called manipulating your emotions. You don't do that. But when you pray to the Father, you know where you've come from, and you're grateful, and you're thankful, and you know that you don't deserve to be on this earth because you're not righteous enough, but yet for some reason, He still wants you to know about Him. He wants you to learn about His sacred space. He wants you to know how to approach Him. He knows the prophecies are that everybody has to go to Jerusalem during the feast, so He wants you to know about His timetables. He wants you to know about the seasons. He wants you to know about how to approach Him. Imagine somebody gives you $1 million right now. How will you be treating that person? Come on now, let me ask you a question. Somebody gives you $1 million right now. You are in debt, $500,000. Someone gives you $1 million. How grateful will you be for that person? I mean, how respectful will you be to him? How would you treat him in your house? Are you going to prepare the best table to invite him to dinner? Well, guess what? My king has set up his temple, and Israel didn't do a good job to maintaining the holiness, and it's been dispersed. Yeshua came to restore the names of the Father. He came to restore the honor of my king, and then He has given us a great gift. He forgiven your debt of death. Amen. And then He says, would you like to come now and sit at my table on Shabbat? I want to restore you to your mandate. I want you to come sit on my Shabbat. Don't worry about provision. I'll give you a double portion. And then He'll tell you the story in the Torah. This is how I did it in the wilderness. You know, you'll be delivered from death, from Egypt, from slavery, from chaos. And I will bring you out, and I will sit you on my table. First, I'll take you to my mountain. And then I'll sit you. Every week, I want to have a meeting with you. Prepare the table, because your king is going to sit in your table. That's what the temple is about. That's why Judaism have taken the Shabbat, the Kabbalah Shabbat, the service of the temple, the reception of the Shabbat, and they use a lot of temple principles within the whole Shabbat table. You know, we wash our hands. Why do we wash our hands? Because the Bible tells us, who shall ascend unto the mountain of the Lord? Those with clean heart and clean hands. Why? Do you know that in the ancient world, somebody righteous was considered somebody with clean hands? So when you wash your hands and you say, Lord, thank you for bringing us here and, for the command to wash our hands. That command was given to the priest, but now we are being priests that night. And the Lord says, what I'm saying is, I'm washing my hands. It's a custom. It's a tradition implemented into the Shabbat table. But you know why? Because we're sitting in His holy day, in His holy space, and He's our guest. And He says, and you're telling Him, Lord, am I righteous in your eyes? Am I worthy to sit at your table? Is my heart right with you? It takes that whole custom to a different dimension, because now we understand it. So how can we criticize things that we don't understand? That's the problem we have. We don't study these things, we criticize. Okay? Is this making sense? I'm a little passionate about this. I just don't know why but the Lord loves us so much sometimes, and I really do not understand why He is so willing to allow us to teach about His temple, really. Couldn't sleep last night. I've been up since 4. Because I was sitting there and going like, you don't understand. I'm never afraid to speak in front of people. Unless I'm teaching about the temple. Because this is His house. I messed this one up. It's on me. You don't understand the responsibility. If I lead you astray on this one, it's on me. I bear that guilt. I want to make sure that He gets all the honor. I want to make sure that He gets all the glory. I want to make sure that it's not me. You think, oh, he's so smart. No, I got a teacher. No, I want to redirect it to the source. I want to redirect it to the person who will do, the God of Israel who does everything. Okay? All right. So let's continue here real quick. Yeshua talked about the Father's house. Let's talk about this real quick. The temple is the house of my Father. That's why we study the temple. Because Yeshua told us in John chapters 2, verse 13 to 16, that the temple is His Father's house. Now, He was not against the temple function or the temple service. He was only against the corruption in the temple. Okay? Verse 15 says, so He made a whip out of cords and drove all the people from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. Clearly, that cannot be in here. Not talking about there. Talking about some of the areas. Everything is considered temple courts. But this is more inner, holier areas. You follow me? Okay, so He's talking about, where was I? There. both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins on the money changers and overthrew their tables. To those who sold those, he said, get out of here. Stop turning my father's house into a market. Now, listen, the temple was a marketplace. It had for market, it had for exchange. It was a money exchange place because people would bring coins from other countries that had images of God. So you cannot do that in the temple, so you have to change it for the shekel. But what happens is, the Mishnah talks about the tax that they were charging. Okay? Some of the rabbis or the priests at that time, they were against some of the corruption that was going on by the house of Ananias. The house of Ananias was corrupt. They were sons of Aaron, but they usurped the authority. So let's say that my son is going to be, I have two boys. My oldest is the one in line to be the Kohen Hagadol, the high priest. But my younger son now usurps that authority. Or let's say that his family is an Aaronic family too, sons of Aaron. Okay, but he is related to me, but my sons are the one. So we're brothers. We're brothers. Okay? But it's through me and my sons. Although we're brothers, his sons do not qualify to be high priest. Only the sons of this line. During the time of the Maccabees, then one of his sons talked to the government and took my authority away and passed it to that family, which is usurping the authority, encroaching, and getting away. That's what happened. Okay? So now, the people in the first century, they were priests, the high priests, but they were not the ordained family. They usurped the authority and they became corrupted. Okay? So the temple is not the problem. It's the corruption within the people who are supposed to keep the service. But we don't study the temple, so we assume it's talking about the temple. Right? Isn't that what they taught us? Okay? Now, Matthew chapter 21:13. As it is written, my house will be called the house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers. My house shall be called the house of prayer. He's quoting verses here. Mark 11:17. Is it not written, my house will be called the house of prayer for all nations? Luke 9, the same thing. Luke 19, right? He's quoting Isaiah 56, verse 8 and 7, verse 7 and 8. And I will bring to my holy, what? My holy mountain, and give them joy in my house of prayer. Their burnt offerings and sacrifice will be accepted in my altar. For my house will be called a house of prayer for many nations. The sovereign Lord, Yod-Heh-Vav, he declares, he who gathers the exiles of Israel, I will gather still others to them besides those already gathered. That's a prophecy of the restoration of the kingdom. Okay, but notice that the regathering of the exiles is connected to temple. Because it's going to happen on the final Jubilee. Are you guys lost? Are you with me? Okay, good. Isaiah 56, verse 1 and 4. What's the context of Yeshua's words? Thus says Adonai, keep your justice and do righteousness. That's the character of God. That's the foundation of God's thrones, righteousness and justice. For my salvation is near to come, and my righteousness to be revealed. Blessed is the man who does this, the Son of Man who holds fast, who keeps the Sabbath from profaning it. So clearly the Sabbath is all connected with the sacred space of God. Did you know that when you keep the Sabbath, it's a microcosm of Eden? Let me repeat that again. That when you keep the Sabbath, it's a microcosm of Eden? How many of you never thought about that before? What you're doing is restoring perfect order in a chaotic world right there. Now imagine that for 24 hours, the whole world is receiving tikkun, reconciliation of all things. Because there's a Jewish guy or a woman for 24 hours a day, let's say right now 6 o'clock. Somewhere in another country is going to be 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning. So now it's interesting that Israel scattered all over the nations. Maybe the reason is they're scattered is to maintain the order through the chaos at least one time a week. Because for 24 hours, in every time zone, there's a Jewish person declaring the ownership of God on the earth. Starting from evening, you see what I mean? Creation. So you are participating in the maintaining the order of the cosmos. Because God so loved the, it doesn't say that in the Greek. God so loved the cosmos. You are responsible. Studying the temple, it will teach you how, through your words and your observance of some things found in the Bible, you will be responsible, at least during the feast and at least on Shabbat, to maintain the order of the cosmos by our obedience, not reinventing the wheel, doing what we want, just following what he says. That's what I think about when I do all this stuff. Okay? Move on. It's all about Isaiah and about the prophecies, so you already know that. I just put them there. Walter put them there, and I kept them because I want you to follow those verses in the theme. So when you present it, it says the specialty of the Sabbath, sacred space, miniature Eden, and you tell them how you are now a partaker of the heaven on earth. Every peace, shalom. See, the purpose of God is to bring shalom on the earth. Shalom is not just a word. Hey, shalom, ma shalomcha. No, it's not. Hey, how you doing? Hey, have a good day. No, have peace on you. No. The shalom that it's talking about truly means complete restoration of everything. Talking about returning to order from creation. That's shalom. By the way, you know that's your mandate, right? You know that's your calling. Your calling as Israel is to bring shalom to the nations. How do you do it? Appointed seasons. How do you do it? Shabbat. Every 7 days. 7 feasts. 7 month doing feasts. I mean, the message of God is so amazing. That remember I told you when the ark rested on Mount Ararat? Now, don't miss this. The ark rested on Mount Ararat the day in history when Yeshua resurrected. You want me to repeat that? The ark rested, it's on Dina's book. The ark rested on Mount Ararat the day in history when Yeshua resurrected. In the book of Genesis, it calls it the 17th of the 7th month. But we know that in the civil calendar, the 7th month is Aviv, Nisan. In the religious calendar, the first month is Aviv. Yeshua resurrected on the 17th of the month. You see the new creation thing? So just as a sign of Noah, is that what Yeshua said? Ladies and gentlemen, the whole message of Jonah was new creation. It was a new creation. He comes from death to life, from chaos to order, back to a mountain. That's exactly what Yeshua did. His resurrection restored the perfect order of God again. And He's giving you the mandate to be the testimony to do it. Okay? All right. So, let me come here real quick. Don't be troubled. Believe in God and believe in me. My Father's house have many rooms. If it were not true, I would have not told you. I'm going to prepare a place for you. By the way, that language right here in this verse deals with what is called the Goel, the Redeemer. We don't have time to cover that. I got to move on. This verse from Isaiah and the context of the words of Yeshua allows us to make a great connection. The temple, the Sabbath, and returning of the exiles. Remember that the command of the Ezekiel 43 is that we will be ashamed of our abominations. And that was written to the house of Israel. Right? So therefore now, the returning of the exiles is connected with the restoration of the Sabbath. That's why when you came to the Torah, the first thing you did was kept the Sabbath. What a big... I mean, how many of you had this thing happen to you? You prayed, you studied, you ate, and you had 23 hours left in the day. The first Shabbat you kept. Come on now, don't tell me. I mean, I did all that stuff and I still had what do I do now? It was the weirdest, the longest day of my life. The first time I did, I go is this going to ever end? And that was supposed to be exactly the message God wanted to send you. That when you rest from your work and you rest in Him means that you rule with Him. People use the expression, I rest in Him means I'm not going to now keep the Sabbath. It's the opposite. The word rest means that we're going to rule with Him on the earth, right? So all of a sudden, I remember the first day I kept Sabbath. I didn't know what to do. So what do? I guess we pray. With some grape juice, Manischewitz. Boy, have we graduated from that. Hey, by the way, I know where you're at in your walk when I invite you for Shabbat and you bring Manischewitz. Right, Gabriel? I always tell my wife, okay, I know we're going to know how much they've been doing it, how long they've been doing it based on what wine they bring. Ben David, or Magen David, or Manischewitz. Magen David, that may be 3-4 years. Manischewitz is the first one. And it's amazing. You can never get drunk on that thing. It's too sweet. You can drink more than just a little bit. They do that for a reason. But anyway, it only shows our growth. It is true. Some of you swear by Manischewitz. Right? It's okay. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. We drink the Manischewitz. Then we go to Barcan, and then we go to all these ready ones. If you don't drink wine, don't judge me. Anyway, I'm just having fun. So the purpose of humanity, ladies and gentlemen, what is the purpose of humanity? Is that the ultimate goal of creation, read it with me, all of you, please. The ultimate goal of creation is for humanity to dwell with God. Ladies and gentlemen, think about those words. Let it resonate through your being. This weekend, we're going to be learning about everything that we can to show you on the temple. You see how thick that book is? It's a lot of information there. You're not going to remember it all. But I do want you to remember one thing. He called you. Out of thousands of people, you are the only 100 that answer the call, because he wants to teach you that he wants to dwell with you in your homes, in your lifestyle, with your children, with your family. Now, what have you done to find that much favor? Why should he be so mindful of you? That's what keeps me in awe of him. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, there's never been a time when I teach in the temple that I don't cry eventually. Because you don't know what goes through in my heart. You know, as I'm teaching on the temple, and the most amazing honor I ever had was to teach about the temple in Jerusalem. I mean, think about that. In Jerusalem. Teach about the temple. Defend the house of my king amongst his people. Some Puerto Rican guy, you know, from Santurce, Puerto Rico, who grew up in California, who was more focused on making a life in baseball professionally and baseball scouting and TV and all that stuff. And with all my faults and all the stuff that I did, he was willing to hear my cry when I was repenting. Not only did he forgive me, he actually believed me when I asked him, will you please let me make a difference in your kingdom? When I begged him, I remember that tabernacle, that's the second one I have. The first one that I purchased, I bought it because my son provoked me to jealousy. He was going to a Baptist school, and he was telling me about the tabernacle. And I wasn't even following Torah then. I went and bought a model of the tabernacle. I opened the book of Exodus, and I began to build it myself. That's when I fell in love with it. And now to reach so many different types of people about the temple, and I love to defend the temple. That's one thing I will always get into debate with. I don't care who you are. You mess with my father's throne, I will take issue with that. I'd rather be known defending the honor of my king than just say, oh, just be political correct. This is okay. No. When it deals with the thing of the king of the universe, we have to have order. You know, and the thing is, this is the area that I study, and I'm still learning a lot. So this is a process we're in. So when we read now Genesis chapters 1, we're not going to read the whole thing clearly, but I want you to consider, make a note in this chapter, everything deals with function. Order from chaos to order. You're going to see that blueprint in Genesis 1. From chaos to order, chapters 3, chaos ensues again. Right? All the way to chapters 11. Complete chaos. Now remember, it wasn't a problem building a temple. I mean, when the people wanted to build a ziggurat, it wasn't a problem building that, because everybody had them. They were seeking after their creator. The problem was their intention. When they said, I want to build this to make our name great. Read it in the book of Genesis. And then the departure goes to Abraham. And in Abraham, it says that, no, I will give you a great name. The Lord says, if you obey me, I will give you a great name. But your job, Abraham, is to keep and protect the way of the Lord and to do righteousness and justice. In other words, you lift up the name of God, He will make you a great name. So if we lift up the house, if we learn about His house, we are lifting up His throne, the footstool, His name, His authority, His kingship, and then He will build our name. He will make our name great. But that should not be our motivation. Our motivation is so that when you think about this course, you're thinking, we're going to praise the Lord. We're going to be hosted by the Lord Almighty Himself. He's going to provide the resources so that you can have the best, so you can sit and just learn about the house. I don't want the credit. I don't want the honor. I want us to give all the honor and credit to the King. No matter what. We're just facilitators. He uses us to facilitate. We need the people. We need the resources. But our job is not us to take the credit. It's for us to study the temple so that His name will be exalted. So that He will get all the honor no matter what. Yeah, it feels good to get a pat on the back. But that's not the intent. The intent is for us to be the facilitators to study the temple so that He will be exalted the way He deserves. That's what we hear Okay? So when we read Genesis, think about those themes as you go through it, okay? I left the verses there because when you read it with your congregation or your study groups, you're going to go through from chaos to order, function. Then you connect humanity and how the Lord now gives you a mandate. He tells you you're going to rule, you're going to reign, you see, rule with humanity. He wants you to have a purpose. The temple teaches you purpose, teaches you roles, it teaches you protocols, it teaches you order, it teaches you submission, it teaches even how to do business. And it teaches that to serve God, you need everybody's gift. You have a vineyard, you have an olive trees, you have the barley, you have the wheat, you have the sheep, you have the goats, and you can put the goats and the sheep together, but they still need it. You have the cattle, and then you have this. And by the way, you have a business. We need you guys. Without it, we cannot serve the Lord because it's all about one people, one heart, one content, one voice. That's what the temple teaches you. In the process of serving God, we are ministering to one another. You bring your best for the Lord, He will bless you. He will provide more resources for you so that now you can help somebody else. And then He gets all the credit and all the honor. Genesis chapter 2 is all about, I got to move on, man. It's all about the garden and the temple. The function and the purpose of man. The planet and Creator Himself are locked and hidden in the study of the temple. That's a great quote that Walter put together there, and I think it's so true. We talked about this. You know, the function, the purpose of man, the planet, and the Creator Himself are locked, hidden in the study of the temple. Have you ever wondered why the priests always wore white? Now look at the love of my King. My God is so good that even though we cannot go beyond a threshold in the temple, and all those guys are wearing white, and we're not, because they are the representation of Adam on the earth. Their service is to show you what you should have been doing, but because we broke the commands, we cannot do it. But even then, even though there's a separation between the heavenlies, the connection between heaven and earth, okay? The temple is a connection between the heaven and earth. The priest is the mediators between heaven and earth and the facilitators. My King is so good that He allows one man once a year to go into the innermost sanctum, the holiest places, to still have fellowship with humanity. That's why the high priest represents all of humanity. Because Adam can also mean humanity. You follow? So now you understand why one guy is chosen out of Israel to still go into the Holy of Holies. The Lord think about this. The Lord so desperately wants to fellowship with you, but He knows there's a separation. It's called death. And He cannot dwell where there's death, cannot dwell in His presence. So therefore, He allows a perfect man, physically and supposedly spiritually and morally, to still have access to His perfection so that you can still be heard through Him. That's what the book of Hebrews was written for. To let you know you still have that access. You still have that one man, perfect in everything. Chapter 7 tells you. So that we can still have our cases being heard on high. That's why we study the temple. This is the importance of it. Are you getting something out of this? It's a very different type of teaching that I'm used to doing. I like to just give all kinds of crazy stuff, you know. But Walter did this teaching, and it makes such an impression in my life, you know, that I said, can I use it? And he was so kind to let me use it and taught it to me. So I hope I'm doing justice to it, because I'm sure we're not going to cover it all, but now you understand the principle, okay? The temple becomes a microcosm, a summary on a scale of the universe. Do you know the veil? The veil in the temple, at the entrance of the temple here? There was a veil in that door. The veil in this door was designed as the Milky Way. It's supposed to represent heaven. Okay, this was designed as a garden inside. You see what I mean? So there's so many things we need to learn. This teaches us that. So the menorah is supposed to represent an almond tree, the tree of life. Okay? Okay, it says a summary of a scale of the universe, revealing the function of man and the concept that we need to understand in order to relate correctly to a holy God in the midst of a planet complete, corrupted, and contaminated by sin. So therefore, the temple is the perfect environment for God to dwell in so He can convey to us our way back to His holiness. He tells you which way to enter and all that stuff. Purpose of humanity. The extensive description of the creation of humanity on the 6 days, mainly in order to understand the perspective of communion with God on the 7th day. The 7th day, the Sabbath, is the enthronement ceremony of God on the earth. Enthronement ceremonies took place in 7 days. The enthronement, or in this case, the ordination of the high priests, the sons of Aaron, took place in 7 days. The feasts are patterns of 7 weeks, 7 months. He has 7 unleavened. You know why unleavened bread was 7 days? Do you know that in Egypt, they used to do breads as worship, leavened breads as worship to the gods? Especially in the spring. So now we know why the Lord says no leaven in your homes. Unleavened bread. Why? Because you don't want anyone to thinking that you're worshiping the God of Israel like the way you worship the God of Egypt. To make a distinction. So we're supposed to be separate. We're supposed to know the holy from the profane. But we don't study that because we're not taught. Okay? So here we are. We're doing our best to share with you. As the crown of creation, humanity is made to be in the image and the likeness, the mut, of God, the Creator. Think about this. We are in the Creator. Israel was not supposed to have images because you're supposed to be His image on the earth. Not for worship, but to facilitate to the nations whom your God is. Okay? Now you can keep reading on that. And you get now the idea. I'm going to move on here real quick. The purpose of humanity. The image of God describes the uniqueness of human existence by virtue of which the individual can enter into a relationship with God. The human being is considered to be a representative of the character and the image of God on earth. That's why you study the temple. So you learn the character, the honor, the righteousness, justice, the holiness, all these things that sets Him apart. Now, let me move on. Men separated from God has not only lost God, but also the purpose for His humanity. Men alone is not the goal of God's creation. Okay? The ultimate goal is for humanity to dwell with God. So we make it all about us. To the point that in America, it's legal now to murder children in the womb. So here it is. God gives you a gift. The fruit out of your body becomes the children. So when we abort a child, we are saying we don't want our mandate. We don't want the gift. We don't want who we want. We don't want to be His image. You see what I mean? It makes no sense. A woman who's pregnant and then some guy murders her with a baby, the guy gets double murder. I don't understand that. You see what I mean? No. The real issue behind this whole abortion thing is that we want to use the empowerment of women and men to just be morally decayed. Because there's no commitment in marriage anymore. So therefore we give them an open, relationship, do whatever you want. Now think about this. With all the moral sins that we've had in our past, still God forgave us. And He still used us. Even with unspeakable things that we've done in the past. And still He teaches us His house, His holiness, His temple. He still wants to dwell with you. Things that we've done to kill ourselves and kill others unwillingly. And He still wants to fellowship with you. That's why you're here. Don't forget it. That's why you're here. So let me move on to this. The temple, the beautiful home. That's the house. I always say, like David did, I wish I had the money. David did, I did. But sometimes you find yourself in a house with a little piece of land and you think the land of my king is desolate and, is divided and people fighting over it. There's no temple but an abomination on top of the mountain. And sometimes I feel guilty. I'm saying, man, I have a house. I have a piece of land. How come my king doesn't have his house? Well, in the meantime, we are His house. In the meantime, we are His house. Let me repeat that. In the meantime, we are that house. We are supposed to represent Him all over the nations. Until He returns, and He will rebuild it, and then all the nations will go up. And that's a great privilege, So Psalms 19, verse 1 and 3, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims His handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, and nor are there words whose voice is not heard. I mean, the place of prayer, the place of everything that the Lord wants from us. I'm going to move on. I want to show you something real quick. I think you already get that. So I just want to, once I give you the introduction, you get the rest, okay? The purpose of humanity. And when Walter mentioned this, I really wanted to highlight this. The Garden in Eden, this is what you always see and what you always learned, right? It's perfect environment, it's really nice or whatever. But in reality, and I agree with him 100%, in reality, this is really what you're supposed to be studying about the garden. Rivers with the tabernacle, with the cherubs, with the altar, and the way back to the Lord. Tree of life. It's a perfect environment. It's the perfect environment of His holiness. He wants to bring you to life. The temple is not about death. People focus on the death of the animal, when in fact it's the blood manipulation that brings life. Because the animal is food for the priest. You see what I mean? Some of us burn on the altar, but a lot of it is food for the priest. By the way, this is the reason why the priest was not allowed to eat anywhere in the area, in the area of the priest or inside the temple. They were not allowed to eat anywhere in here. There was bread of the presentation here, of the presence, but they were not allowed to eat it in there. You know why? Because in Egypt and in all the temples, all the priests, they ate all their food in there, and the people outside thought that the gods were eating the food. So Israel says, no, the food is for the priests. You're going to keep them. They're going to work for you. The blood is what ratifies the covenant, brings the restoration. It's about life. It's not about death. First thing we need to change is the perspective of what the blood represents. It's about life and not death. This is really what's happening. Temple function without physical walls. The divine intention expands their sacred precincts throughout the planet. That means that Adam was a temple to God. Eve, she was a temple. Together they were the temple. You follow? And the whole purpose of humanity was to change the perception of the humanity at the time that the gods created humans for the sake of slavery. Now imagine if they told you since you were a kid that only the kings, the priests, and only the kings, the princes, and the priests can hear the voice of God. That's what they believe in Egypt. Only the elite can hear the voices of gods. The Lord goes to Mount Sinai. He takes Israel. And then He tells Israel, sanctify yourself because I'm speaking to you. Now everyone in Israel hears the voice of God. Now think psychologically what He's trying to tell Israel. You learned you were slaves. You never knew the God of Israel the way you know Him now. But there they taught you that you were only slaves. You had no rights. You were oppressed. You were marginalized. You were outcast. Now I redeemed you. Because I keep my word, I keep my promises. Now I vindicated you when you went through the Red Sea. I took you to my holy mountain. I will separate you. I'll make you a holy nation, a peculiar people, a royal priesthood. And everyone hears the voice of God. The mixed multitude and the Israelites. See, to us, we don't understand the meaning of that. But back then, He's saying, wait a minute. You mean to tell me that the God of Israel is not treating us as slaves? He's treating us as royal people. That's why Israel's supposed to wear the tzitzis with the blue. Only the elite wear tassels in the ancient world. But Israel said, no, Israel's going to wear them. You walk by the way, you see a baker, you see a worker, you see construction worker, you see all that. They're all wearing the blue thread. And you're going like, wait a minute, I thought that was only regulated to certain type of elite people. No, you don't understand. Israel is an elite kingdom, royal kingdom, with different functions in the bodies and different roles. Every role is important. From the sweeper, to the cook, to the teacher. Like I always tell people, and I'll finish with this. The most important job right now is the speaker. The moment I stop is the snacks and the people who prepare the snacks. At lunch are the cooks. Right? When it gets really hot in here, is the guy who will have the power to open that little box and turn down the air conditioning. Because we can't do it. He has the key. Get it? Without him, this doesn't work well. That's what the temple is for. He's trying to let you know your function within it. So let me ask you a question and I'll finish with this. Have you asked the Lord, what is your role in His kingdom? What is your purpose? Why has He brought you here? Leaders, regular members of congregations. You don't have to be a temple expert to know these things. Just remember that the purpose that you have is to reveal to the nations the honor, the character, the integrity, the righteousness, the justice of our King, so that the nations will see that through our lifestyle, when we eat on Shabbat, that there's a microcosm of Eden. And you invite somebody over, make sure they understand that they better be on point, because this is my King's table. You're not to go out there and then criticize after we give you hospitality. If they're not grateful, don't invite them back. Now, if they say, hey, can I eat some of that good food? Come on in, and I'm going to show you to whom we give honor to. We drink the wine of the grape. We thank you for the blessing. Oh, Lord, King of the universe on the Shabbat. We eat the bread, double portion. King of the universe, we wash our hands. Oh, Lord, are we worthy? And we eat the food. Thank you, Lord. We pray for our wives. We pray for our children. What a great day to manifest perfect shalom. And the one who provides it is the King of the universe. That's why we study the temple. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May you be blessed on this weekend. May all of this information only brings you to one conclusion. That we still need a lot to learn. And that the Lord loves us enough to provide the resources so that you can be here this weekend. And I do pray that you're blessed. Take it with you. Share it with many. I pray these courses will help you in that. Keep us in your prayers. There's a lot of work to be done. And there's a lot more information that you didn't see. But read it with me, so we're done here. Always remember that the ultimate goal of creation is for humanity to dwell with God. And how would you learn how to do that if you do not even know how to enter the courts of the Lord? And how to present yourself before Him. And how to pray before the King, your Maker. Amen. Father of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, we thank you, we praise you, we uplift you, we honor you, and we are so grateful for the privilege, the honor to be your servants, to be your people. And I pray that all these teachings that we will do today will bring honor to your name, to your house, to our Messiah, and that all the nations will know that Adonai Hu Elohim, there is no one like you. I am so grateful and thankful for the opportunity. Amen. Shalom. Thank you, guys.